I think 9 times out of 10, the intent and desire is there. People genuinely want to help other human beings. So it's only when they start to think that I can't help them, or I don't have the resources, or I don't have the backup, or I'm going to do something, I'm going to get in trouble for it. Those kind of things are what will hold people back from making some of those decisions, or lessen that desire, I think, a little bit.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman, founder of Backlooper. I help attractions collect guest feedback and identify top priorities needed for improvement.
And I'm Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting. I help leaders lead so they can increase employee engagement and retention.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing really well, but I got to tell you, I'm completely unprepared for today's podcast episode. I have no idea what to expect is going to come out of this.
Why not?
You haven't told me. You told me that you've got a really cool story to tell and that you want to talk about on the podcast. And that enough, is exciting for me to want to find out what it is. So,
all right.
So how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. And I don't know if it's a cool story, but I thought it was an interesting story. And I think, your word that you use a lot is granular. I think we're going to get into the granular aspects of expectations today.
Okay.
Because this was a guest service, a guest experience situation that I had recently at the time of this recording. And what I walked away with it, walked away from it with, was a question about expectations. And so I'll get into the story. But part of the reason I didn't want to share it with you ahead of time was because I wanted your immediate, unadulterated thoughts.
All right. Raw, unfiltered.
Unfiltered, exactly.
Yeah.
I also thought, because this is so granular, but I think it might give people some insight into where some things come from, because I'll be honest, I wasn't a great customer in this scenario.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, I didn't feel I was a great customer. So I thought walking through this and talking through this might have some value with people who are providing guest experience situations to their clients and their customers, to their guests, to their visitors, whatever you want to call them, and where some of those situations may go wrong, even though you think you're doing all the right things.
Okay. I think I think that's a really cool lens to look at it from. And I like to say that too, of really not just putting yourself in the customer's shoes when thinking about guest service, but thinking about, how would you handle the situation if you were the customer? How would you call to complain maybe, or, provide that feedback? And how does that end up getting you the resolution that you are looking for as the customer? Which maybe it can be tough then from the operator side to say, okay, we want to train our customers to complain in a certain way. But I always think it's very beneficial. I think you even wrote a blog post or an article a few years ago on if you want to provide better service, be a better customer or something like that. Or if you want better service.
If you want to get better service, be a better customer.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, again, I did not feel like I was living up to that.
Okay.
In all transparency. So I want to get your perspective on what the company did that may have triggered something, and what I could have done to be a better customer. Okay.
So are you going to ask me to critique not only the company, but also you?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to getting into it.
This is what you do, right? From a guest experience standpoint. So
sure.
I will tell you that there's going to be a bit of a preamble to this, just to kind of set the stage, because this really is all about expectations.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. Here we go.
All right.
This has everything to do with my glasses.
Okay.
So I've had these frames for a couple of years now, and I personally love them. They fit well. I think they look good on me. My wife convinced me to get the blue. If you can tell, it's got a blue tint, because she said everything else I wear is blue. Hello. So that would really go well with a lot of my stuff. So I love these glasses. Well, maybe 2 years ago, I had them for a while and I needed new lenses because my prescription had changed. I go in and I get new lenses. Well, at the time, and I didn't really know this, they changed my nose pads. So if you're not a glasses wearer, and your glasses have nose pads, if you're watching on YouTube, it's the little things right here, okay? Now, that may seem like a really small detail, okay? But that is literally where your glasses rest on your nose.
Otherwise, they would just slide right off.
They would slide right off, or they'd be in the wrong position. And so from a comfort standpoint, from a, where you see through the lens, it's actually quite a big deal, the lens or the nose pad. And they put new ones on, I think as a courtesy, putting new lenses in, kind of freshen them up a little bit. Great, wonderful. So this company, or the place that I've been getting my glasses since moving to North Carolina, has been wonderful. And this is where I went. I go there for my eye exam. I go there, if my glasses need adjusting. They're always wonderful. Super nice, super friendly. The kind of people that you want taking care of you when your body health is in jeopardy, or is in question, right?
Sure.
So I trust them to take care of my eyes. Okay. Again, a little bit of preamble. So they put these new nose pads on. Well, probably 3 months later, one of them falls off. Just falls off. And again, if you're not a glasses wearer, you may not know what a pain that can be, because a lot of times there's a little sharp piece that will dig into your nose.
Yeah.
As you're wearing the glasses, then it becomes really annoying. It hurts. It can, really make an indentation anyway. So I go back to the same place where I got my glasses, I got my eye exam, and nice as pie, couldn't have been a better experience. I go in, they fix them. I'm in and out in 2 seconds. Okay. Then COVID hits.
Oh.
And it happens again. Okay. The other nose pad falls off. And I'm now thinking it's when they put the new lenses in that they are, maybe it wasn't quite the right fit, or they didn't put them on right, and that's why they're falling off. So I go back in the exact same place. Of course, because of COVID, they had different procedures, which I didn't know about. So I get there, the door's locked. And there's a sign that says, because we have, a skeleton crew, basically, you have to call and make an appointment to come in. Just like at our attractions, right? You've got to make an appointment. You got to make a reservation to come in.
But you didn't know that prior to.
I didn't know that. And quite frankly, that didn't bother me, because I knew they were taking the precautions to keep me safe. And it aligned with all the other expectations that I had of this establishment. So I'm like, okay. So I pull up my phone standing right there and I say, can I make an appointment? Yada, yada, yada. I make an appointment. I drive home. Next day I drive back, whatever it is. They fix my glasses again. No questions asked. They fix it. Everything's great. I go on my way. Then I get a big scratch on my lens. And obviously through no fault of the glasses place. But I go in, I again make an appointment because it's during COVID. And I go in and they said, okay, well, we could order you a new lens. We can't really buff it out. I didn't know how deep the scratch was, but they said, we'll order you a new lens. While I was there and I was, talking to the person, they said, how are things going with you during COVID? And I said, well, I'm doing a lot of Zoom calls. And I said, there's times, again, if you're on YouTube, you'll see me do this. I raise my head like this so I can see through my bifocal so that the picture is clear. And they said, oh, we can do something about that. And we really didn't talk much more about it. When I got my new lenses in, they had actually been proactive and moved my bifocal up a little bit in the new lenses.
Okay.
Which I thought was great. I'm like,
but that doesn't change anything with the way that you actually wear your glasses or the comfort or anything?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. In fact, I was really happy. Like, they proactively took this step and made my glasses more useful for me now that I'm, looking at the computer and doing more Zoom calls.
Okay.
So I
define that as a wow moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this is also completely raising my expectations
Mm.
of this establishment. And that's part of why I'm telling all this, because that's going to lead to the actual situation.
Okay.
I see you're taking notes. Anyway, you're not. It's okay.
I have a pen in my hand though, and I have a notebook. The notebook's empty.
So that all happens, and then another nose pad falls off.
Ugh.
And this is where sort of the wheels come off of the story.
Okay.
So I call him back, and this was like a week and a half ago, based on when we're recording this. And I said, do I still need to make an appointment? And they said, nope, not anymore. Just come on in. You're gonna have to wear a mask, and we have one-way traffic, just like we had before, all good. So I go in, and it was a Friday afternoon, nobody there. I think it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, actually. So there was nobody in the store. Very, very nicely and warmly greeted by the person behind the counter. They said, what can we help you with? I told them about my glasses. They said, okay, go have a seat in the waiting area. We're going to have somebody out for you in just a second. I didn't even get my butt in the seat when somebody's calling from the back, Mr. Heller, come on over. We'll take care of you. Right. So again, you talked about that wow moment with the lenses. Everything to this point has been fabulous. And just, again, I feel really taken care of at this place. So I hand them my glasses and I said, this is the issue. It's happened 4 or 5 times now with the nose pads. And she kind of looks at him and she's like, oh, okay. She's like, I'm not sure if we have that nose pad. And I said, okay. But she said, I'm going to go look. I'm going to go look, and I'm going to look high and low. And if we have it, we're going to fix it for you. So she leaves, comes back a couple minutes later. And I noticed that she's handing my glasses back to me with the same little like Band-Aid thing that I had put on it. So clearly it hadn't been fixed. Okay. So she hands it back and she says, I'm really sorry. We don't have that nose pad. And I said, well, I've been here before and you've been able to fix it. She said, yeah, it's a specialty nose pad. We must have just run out of them. Okay. So I said, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? And this is really where the wheels fall off.
Okay.
Because she said, and it's probably not a bad thing, but I think I took it in a not so great way. She said,
can't wait.
She said, well, you can go online to the Ray-Ban site and see if they sell those nose pads online. And I said, well, I've already bought them, as part of the glasses. You sell Ray-Bans here. Why should I have to go online to get? And I can't explain exactly at that moment why I was getting upset. I had an epiphany later, which I'll share. But at that point, I was getting upset. And then the conversation kind of derailed from there. She's like, no, you don't have to buy another pair of glasses, but maybe just for the nose pad. And I said, but you sell them here, right? And she said, right. We sell them. We don't service them, yada, yada, yada. And I regrettably got upset. I grabbed my glasses and I got up and I walked out without really giving her an opportunity to make things right after that.
So you just stormed out of the store?
I don't know if I'd stormed out, but I walked briskly out of the store. I may have huffed a little bit. And I couldn't explain my emotional reaction until later, but this is where I'd like to stop for a second.
Okay.
And I want to get your thoughts based on the ramp of expectations that we've seen, and now that suggestion and why it might have tipped me off.
Okay. So they had continually not only met your expectation, but exceeded your expectation to the point where the bar kind of slowly and naturally kept rising up a little bit, that your standard of expectation was higher than it was previously. If they would shrug you off, or if the first time you went in there, you were told to get them online, you may have either said, well, that's kind of annoying. Maybe I'll find, another place to go. Or, oh, that's the standard. And then your baseline would have been lower than it was during the circumstance that you had this. But because they kept providing you this fantastic experience, you noticed a lapse in their consistency, which caused a frustration because the experience that you had, now there was a larger gap based on the expectation that had risen.
And that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because I never even thought about that part. Like if they had said that the very first time, I might not have had such a high expectation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's really interesting. So that could have absolutely led to that piece of it.
Yeah. Well, the key is, I mean, consistency. I think that's a common theme we have heard consistently on in many of our conversations. In that, yeah. I mean, even sometimes when I said a wow moment earlier and what they provided for you, it wasn't, they didn't throw you a parade. Like it was something that was like small and it was going above and beyond even just a little bit. But when you do that consistently is when, obviously is when satisfaction goes up and loyalty goes up and retention goes up and advocacy and positive word of mouth and all of that. But the difficulty with that is maintaining that consistency so that, I think we could easily go into saying, okay, well, now this needs to be ingrained in the company culture so that the response that you got, something like that shouldn't be the natural reaction from an employee. It should be in the mindset. My gears are turning of saying, well, instead of telling you to go buy it from Ray-Bans directly, if you've got this relationship with them, they should be saying, hey, let's just order that for you. Maybe they're charging you for it. Maybe they're absorbing that as just part of, hey, here's kind of a service failure because the nose pads keep on popping out of this guy's glasses. So, maybe if we do this now, we're able to continue this retention and keep that going. But also maybe you wouldn't be telling the story because it would have just been another wow moment that you experienced in your string of time as a customer of this business. Which then goes into the whole fact of, people will share a negative experience sometimes like 10 to 20 times more or with 10 to 20 times more people than a positive experience. And by consistently delivering wow moments and escalating those wow moments, that you're able to kind of combat that, to say, okay, I'm going to deliver a positive experience that people want to talk about on their podcast and scream from the rooftops, and everything there. So because they had done so many, because they had proved to you in the past that they have this great service culture and go above and beyond in this intuitive sense of anticipating their customers' needs and doing whatever it takes, that a lapse in that provided a greater sense of frustration than if you had a normal expectation that was met every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you hit the nail on the head, and my epiphany later on kind of proves this out in terms of when you said, if they would have said, you know what, we don't have this, but we can order this. Or if they had said, we don't have this, but there's this other place in town that you might want to check, right? Even if they were sending me to another business, which by the way, that's part B and C of the story, which I'll share in a little bit.
Okay.
But they were telling me that it was my responsibility to go get this nose pad. Now, right. if they had ordered it and I had to pay for it, I probably would have been okay with that.
Because it wouldn't happen within the confines of your visit. You would have walked out of the store knowing that wheels were in motion. Maybe you didn't have the nose pads in the glasses, but everything was taken care of and you're walking out with certainty rather than briskly walking out with frustration and scrambling and thinking, well, what are my next actions? Because I thought I was going to walk out with the problem solved.
That is one of the things too that was really going through my mind that immediately I think was part of that trigger. Mm-hmm. And I think this is another part where we can form this into a lesson for people, is that she had the expertise, right? And let me back up too, just for a second. The person who was taking care of me was not rude at all. I mean, she was nice as pie. I mean, her tone was perfect. Everything about the personal interaction and her speech and, the way that she was holding herself, all of that was textbook. If you would, you know what I mean? It was just, you can't fault her for any of that. But I think when she was saying that I should go online and look for these nose pads, the first thing that's going through my mind is, well, how do I know which ones, right? If I get them, how do I know how to put them on right? I mean, I've worn glasses almost my whole life and I've made little adjustments. I'm sure none of them are correct, but there is an expertise that you go to an eye doctor for, or you go to a regular doctor, or you go to the auto mechanic for, that you don't have, or I'm not saying you, but I don't have, right? And I don't want that person to now make this a DIY project, right? To put these nose pads on. So this is where sort of part C, I'll call it, of the story comes in, because in my in the aftermath of that conversation, I knew that there was another glasses store in town that was in the same plaza as one of our favorite restaurants. So I went there. It was on the way home anyway. And I pull in, and as soon as I walk in, I have my glasses, and I said, "Do you happen to have this nose pad?" And he's like, "Oh, no, that's a specialty one. We don't have it." He says, "But you know where you might try?" And he gave me another place that was in town. He didn't know if they'd be open. But then he said, Lens Crafters and Ray-Ban, they have a relationship. One of them owns the other. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said, probably your best bet is Lens Crafters. And I said, okay, so where's the nearest one? He said, it's up on Long Shows Road. It's about a half an hour away. So I said, all right, well, that's worth a half an hour drive, So first of all, I called him and I said, do you have this little thing for this special Ray-Ban? Oh yeah, we have that. Went up there. It was a great experience up there. But had the person at the first place done that and said, here's how you can get it taken care of, not here's how you can do it. And I don't want to sound like I can't like put on a nose pad on my glasses, right?
Right.
But when I got to Lens Crafters, and this is where the expertise comes in. When I got to Lens Crafters, the woman who helped me out, she put the nose pad on, and then she put the glasses on my face. And anybody who's had glasses, framed up on their face, that look of the person that they look straight at you, right? And they're trying to see if the glasses are on right. And she said, no, that's not right. She goes, give me your glasses again. So she made a little adjustment on the nose pad. I put them back on. It was like I was putting on a comfortable pair of old shoes. I mean, they just fit perfectly. I could see better. It was like I was going from standard definition for some reason to HD, because, the nose pad really defines where your eyes go through the lens of the glasses, right? And right. I told you, I've got bifocals. So, there's different spots of the lens that my eye is going to go through. So however she adjusted it, the expertise that she had to do that, it just put the glasses right on my face the perfect way, right? And so that's what I had come to expect from the first place. And I think part of my huffiness as a consumer was that this was so far afield of what I had expected in the previous visits, right, that I was just so taken aback. I didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think that really what it comes down to, if you were to take this service failure that happened and break it into pieces, there's the actual failure that occurred, which was the nose buds falling off, or the nose pads falling off. Sorry, it's been a few years since I'm wearing glasses, but
it's okay.
But that in and of itself, the way you described that wasn't a huge issue, right? That was like, that did not have a magnitude of a negative experience of you saying these nose pads fell off, this is the end of the world, because they were able to fix that quickly. When you were then kind of sent away, even though maybe you weren't sent away, you left on your own accord, but you left without the solution. The service failure became an issue of your time and your energy. And as a result, in order to get it fixed, now you have to think about something that you're not an expert in, whereas the issue could have been resolved very quickly because you were talking to the expert right there. I don't think you were that bad of a customer. I think you teed that up to kind of say that you were terrible. Now, I can't imagine you huffing and puffing and walking away briskly from anything, but I'll take your word that you were. But I think that the energy that they would have had to expend from themselves to solve your issue is a fraction of the amount of energy and time that you are now spending trying to solve your issue, right? Like
Yeah.
that could have been solved by, let me use what I know about nose pads and who makes them and Ray-Bans and lens crafters, and let's get that to you. That could have been a matter of a few minutes. I imagine because of the way that you described the environment, it probably wasn't slammed. Like, I can't imagine this was like, like a super crowded area and trying to like brush you off to the next person, which wouldn't be acceptable in that, time frame either. But it was almost an issue of just laziness that then wasted a lot of your time. And that's worthy of your frustration.
Well, and that's where I thought it might be, something for people to kind of look at with their own teams. Like this person who was, serving me at the first location, again, the way she spoke to me, her demeanor, all of it was wonderful. I couldn't fault her for that at all.
Right.
But was it laziness that said, you go look at the Ray-Ban website to see that they have it? Or was it a lack of knowledge? Like, did she have the knowledge about where else in town I might be able to get this Ray-Ban nose pad? Does she know about the relationship of lens crafters and Ray-Ban? I don't know. I don't know any of that. Had that been one of the first suggestions, maybe I wouldn't have been as huffy as I was at the beginning, because now she's putting it on me. And even if she had said, if you order them and bring them in, we'll put them on for you.
Right.
That wouldn't have been as bad, but I think based on my level of expectation, I would have thought the appropriate proportional response would have been, we don't have that. Let us order it for you, or let's find out where you can get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And even if she didn't have all of the answers, she's probably at least a few steps ahead of you, because this is what she does all day. So even if, she got like 10 to 15, 20% of the way there, and you now had enough to kind of fill in the blanks, your level of frustration, you probably would have walked out more activated of like, okay, now here's what I need to do now. But because of the way that you were just sort of kind of left in the dark, you walked out just not knowing what your next steps would be. And, now you've got this issue you need to solve. You thought you had the answer. You found out that it wasn't, which is not what you expected based off your previous experience. And you walked out, wondering, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot in there, like you said, kind of aligning it back to, what our, what we might be doing with our teams, or even just saying in the attractions industry, of thinking if a guest might have a very minor complaint that has a very minor solution, but without even just that a little bit of extra exerted energy, using the knowledge and the expertise that you have, because you are the one who knows the rules, the policies, the procedures, the hours of operations, the directions, the height requirements. I mean, everything related to, your business. And of course, I'm bringing this back to the attractions industry. Being able to use that can help. That there could have been another wow moment in there that she could have done. But she probably didn't. I mean, there was probably nothing malicious done on her end. It was probably just easier for her to say, why don't you just go check this, versus having that desire to really want to make sure that the issue was resolved, and that you were no longer, you no longer needed to have gears turning as you walked out of saying, okay, well, I have no idea what I do next. Now I need to figure out what happens after this. Yeah.
Well, and to use your word, I was activated afterwards, just probably not in the right way.
Right.
But I think what it really comes down to is what you were just talking about with the expertise, right? When I was realizing that the expert was telling me to take care of it, that's, I think, what got my blood going.
Right.
So
yep.
Absolutely. I want to bring this back to the attractions industry, because I think, this kind of thing might happen more often than we think. And, when someone just walks away, or they are upset for what we might think is no good reason, there's probably a good reason. And that
Right.
experience that they've had may go back months or even years if they've been with you for a long time, if they're an annual pass holder, if they're a member, with you. And, if you listen to what Josh says and you're ramping up your expectations and you are working on exceeding people's expectations all the time, I think one of the dangers then is if you fall off the cliff and you really mismanage the expectation, you could get a bigger gap in that reaction than you're expecting.
Right. But that is not to say set the bar really low. So
No.
under promise and over deliver. There's that mindset of it too. But it's almost like I've kind of said you need to over promise and then over deliver on your over promise, and continuously find creative ways to go above and beyond what your guests are expecting if the bar keeps on going up. Or at least, it doesn't necessarily need to be additional kind of creative actions that you need to come up with, but maintaining that mindset of we have exceeded our guests' expectations. And maybe, it's so hard to measure what an expectation is, and it's hard to measure what an experience is. And there's it's difficult to determine, did they actually touch each other, or, is one of them, greater than the other, or, did it fall below? And this is something that, I talk about a lot as far as, expectation versus experience. But the idea with it is looking at, what your guest has come to expect based off of either previous experiences or if it's their first visit, then what other factors go into that, and making sure you are topping what it is that they expect. And then by looking at it from that lens, you can say, okay, if we've built this really high expectation and we meet that expectation, maybe that's okay. If we've got this loyal customer or this loyal guest, we want to make sure that we are meeting the high expectation that we have proven to them that we can deliver. So if they've got that expectation, then that's the customer saying, I know that they're going to take care of this. So if you've taken care of an issue for a guest before, then all you need to do is just make sure you take care of an issue, for a guest on their next visit. I know that sounds, like very abstract or very simplified of a more complicated topic, especially, you might not have that one-on-one relationship, with your guests, and your guests might not be interacting with the same team members every single time they come visit or every single time they present an issue. But that is where the consistency comes in, that if you are going above and beyond, even just a little bit, but all of the time, then that also needs to be happening with all of your peers, all of your team members, all of your superiors and your subordinates. And that needs to be spread out throughout the entire organization in all departments.
Yeah. Yeah. As you talk about experience, I think back to our conversation with Dennis Mosley Williams, and that really got my wheels turning after this interaction, because I thought, okay, if they were really thinking about experience, right? And I'm thinking about how I'm going to solve this person's dilemma, I probably wouldn't think about putting the solution in their hands. Does that make sense? So even from a culture standpoint, if you are looking at how you're going to provide, outstanding, unforgettable, wow moment experiences to people, I think that really starts with, what can we do for the guest that capitalizes on our expertise and, makes their day as frictionless as possible. Right. So if I were to go back in time and I were this person, serving me, that would have been a thought process that I think would have led to a different solution. Right.
Right. And, a lot of times, we talk about like never saying no to your guest. Right. And it kind of really falls into line with that, because if someone has come to you they're coming to you for one of two reasons. Either it's the solution or help finding the solution. And if you have the solution, great, you've won the day, and hopefully very efficiently and, expediently. And now they're on their way. They're another, happy guest or happy customer that's leaving. If you don't have the solution, then it needs to be, okay, well, what do we need to do to get to that solution? And then it really just goes back to the person who is serving that customer, that guest. They are the experts, and how can they use their expertise to really shrink the amount of time it's going to take to get to the solution?
Right. And it's interesting as I look back at my reaction and my opinion of all this. The nose pads falling off was a minor inconvenience.
Right.
And it was like, oh, it happened again. I'm like, I'm gonna have to go up and get it done. But you know what? 100% honesty, it's COVID. So if I have an excuse to get out of the house, even if I have to wear a mask and, do all those things, it's kind of nice to get out sometimes. So, okay, I'll take a quick drive up, up to the location and get it done. So that was a minor inconvenience. Even driving to the place, the two places afterwards, in my opinion, was minor inconvenience. Driving a half an hour up to Asheville, a minor inconvenience. Again, where I think the ball was dropped a little bit was asking me to be the expert and put it on myself. So
right.
When I think about kind of how this is applied to, different places, again, I think, going back to what you talk about with expectations is understanding what those are. So maybe there's even more conversation about what the expectation might be, where people's expectation are from a long-term guest standpoint. Again, when we're recording this, you had just put out some great data about people's thoughts and feelings on how safe they felt going back to the theme parks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so if we have some more data about that, we have a better understanding of their expectations,
right,
for our guests.
Right.
But where I also think it comes into play is something we really haven't talked about yet, is kind of reading your guest as well. Because the person who was serving me was relatively young, and I take nothing against or nothing away from her when it comes to her age in terms of her being
entirely her fault.
It's not her fault at all.
Just kidding.
But I think it drove her priority as far as where she might look for this resolution or this solution, right? Now, I know I look young, but I'm not as young as she is. I'm not as young as you are. But maybe the option shouldn't necessarily be what you think is best, right, but what you think is going to be best for that particular guest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's where that expertise come back into play, because I just, try to think of my time, working in theme parks and talking to guests and trying to help them have the best experience possible. And that might be completely different for how I would plan my day to have the best experience for me possible. Mm-hmm. A family with many young children who wants to see the parade would probably have a different goal than me if I was, back in my early 20s and wanted to ride as many rides as possible, Yeah. And it all, this all really ties together, because it goes back to, your employees must be the experts at what they do, so that they can, I don't even want to say they can serve your guests the best, because that also just seems too simple to say, but to be able to best anticipate the best solutions for your guests.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to say, what's one of the big takeaways? I know we've talked about a lot of things, but what's one of the big takeaways for people around what you heard and what you feel could have been enhanced in this situation?
Yeah. So I think one of them is either you have the solution or you have the way to get to the solution. And if you don't have the solution, then that's not when the service interaction ends. That's frankly when the next phase of it begins to, okay, well, maybe now this is going to take a little bit longer than expected if I would have had all the answers or if I would have knew exactly what to do. But I still know more than the customer because this is what I do every single day. This is what I live and breathe and do all the time. So I have a better chance of finding the answer than the customer does, who does not do this for a living, who does not do this every single day. So I would say that's one of them.
Yeah. And I would say one of the things I would encourage people to do, again, because this is such a granular topic, in terms of the guest service and the guest recovery, is really look at those situations that could technically be in the guest's hands and figure out how you can take over those situations or those processes in those situations where you can say, let me take care of that for you. I think about the so many different things that people are now doing on their phone, like they're ordering food and they're, buying tickets and all the different things that they do on their phone. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody knows how to do that. Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has the expertise. Yeah, they can fumble around and do it and figure it out and, kind of get through it, but that doesn't mean they're great at it. Now, this is maybe a little different because it was pre-COVID, but I've had people that have said, can I have your phone? And they will take my phone and do something really quick. And so here you go. Here's what you need, right? You may be a little more careful about that when it comes to COVID, but I think that mentality, that thought process of taking things out of the guest's hands that could be a friction point that you have the expertise to solve, really think about how to do that and how to brainstorm that with your teams so that you can take those friction points away. Because I think it does go back to consistency, right? And if you can take away just a couple of friction points away from someone's overall experience, they're going to think that overall experience was that much better.
Right. So if the guest walks away still needing to figure out how to solve their problem, that's a service failure.
I would agree. That's your problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you go above and beyond, another takeaway here, you must do it consistently because you've set a new expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, as I mentioned, kind of be aware of what might happen if you don't, and what little thing might set somebody off.
Right. And do you run the risk of a service failure having a larger impact when you've raised the standard?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in full honesty and transparency, I will go back to that first place again.
Okay.
Because
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they have done so many great things, and, that wow moment with the lenses and, the way I've been treated in the past, that this was a big takeaway for me. And it was a moment for me, but like you said before, I don't think there was any maliciousness there.
Right.
I think she was honestly trying to help. I just didn't feel like it fit the situation.
Okay. So let me ask this, and maybe this goes back to you as a customer. Had you not briskly walked out huffing and puffing, what would have been your next action if you would have stayed in the store and said, I'm not leaving until at least I have some clarity on how to resolve this?
Well, I think, you mean what would my next action be, or what would I want their next action to be?
Maybe a little both. Maybe, how would the rest of that play out if you would have stayed in the store, and maybe you as a customer, maybe saying, okay, she's not helping me, but she is younger. Maybe she's newer. Maybe she's not an expert yet, or maybe she's not an expert in how to resolve this. Maybe I can steer the ship a little bit. Where would you take it?
I think I would probably start to ask questions like, well, where else can I get it? You know? And I probably, if my head was a little more clear, I might have said, okay, now if I do order them, do you put them on for me? Do I have to put them on myself? Like, I probably would have gone down a much more logical road that way. Mm-hmm. And maybe, to your point, I would have been a better customer if I had done those things, right? Mm-hmm. Where I would have wanted her to go, even if she said that first, may have been to say, okay, if you order them, if you bring them in, we'll put them on for you. Or, you know what, let me go look at the computer. She's maybe saying in her head, I can see that what I just suggested was not received well. Okay, let me back up. Let me regroup. let me go to the computer. Let me go to the Ray-Ban website and see what I can find. Make sure you get the right ones. You know, I think if it had gone that direction, we might not be talking about this right now.
Right. You would have walked out happy, or at least knowing that wheels were in motion. Would you have asked to speak to a manager at some point?
That's a tough one. I thought about that when you asked about what my next actions would be. I'm not usually the kind that asks to talk to the manager in those situations. So I don't know. I don't know if I would or not, because I don't know that the manager would have. I shouldn't assume. I shouldn't assume that the manager wouldn't have had another solution. So I'm not sure if I would have.
I think where I'm going with trying to figure this out, because this is a little bit of a difficult issue, because we can talk about this all day and we can say, okay, well, we know how to solve the problem. It's anticipating your customers' needs and going above and beyond for them to help them get an answer. But then how does, that this podcast in and of itself is not going to solve this problem everywhere in our industry, in the world, right? It's going to happen a lot more for a long time. So first of all, there's probably a training aspect to that maybe there was a gap, that maybe that employee, again, like we've said multiple times, or at least you've said multiple times, there was no malicious, activity. She wasn't trying to just brush you off. In fact, she did give you a solution. She said, go check here, but it came across as saying, I can't do anymore, so I'm going to close this out. I wonder if there's, and there wasn't someone, the manager wasn't in the room, right? The manager wasn't there, or someone who would have been able to intervene was there. So how do we create this as more of a long-term fix to help kind of get to that point that for someone on their first day on the job, they don't have all the answers, but they at least have the tools to be able to help find answers?
I think that's a really good question. And one of the things that I used to talk to people a lot about is when you get in those situations, if you asked a question, during the solve part of your LaTask model, right? Maybe it's, what would make this situation better for you? Maybe that's not the exact way to say it, but, asking like if they had said to me, what can we do to make this right?
Right.
Maybe they don't, she didn't know in her mind to go to the computer and look it up. I'm like, well, if you could get me the thing and, if you could order it and get it here, that would make it right. You know what I mean? So maybe even if you don't have all the answers, you've got that question in your back pocket that you can always pull out. If you're not sure what to do, ask the guest. And I heard this a long time ago, and I think you reinforced it, that when you ask a guest what they want for the service recovery, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a lot less than you would have been willing to give or willing to shell out for them. So, if I would have said, yeah, if you could just order one for me and I'll come back and I'll even pay for it, or what, that would have been, much different than me walking out like I did.
Right. Exactly. So I wonder just what the simple way, like what's something that, you could put into day one orientation, and I think I've seen kind of, elements of this kind of throughout, places that I've worked or businesses that I've worked with, of stressing that it's more about the intention and the desire to help than it is about having all of the answers and all of the solutions, at least on day one. With time, with more time comes more proficiency and more ability to solve that problem quicker. Now I'm even thinking of this further, of saying if she had that desire, and this is, we don't need to spend the whole time, attacking the employee. It may have been a training issue. It probably was in some capacity, that if she said, okay, we need to get this solved, you probably would have sat there for another half hour if it would have resulted in you walking out happy.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
You've said the phrase a couple of times, wheels are turning. Right.
Right. Yeah.
If I had noticed in that moment that wheels were turning and she had to go back in the computer and look for this thing, or she had to make an order, or she had to do whatever she had to do, wheels are turning, and we talk about this all the time from with people in queue that when they're waiting, they don't mind waiting. They don't want to be forgotten. So if they see things are going, if they see that the employees are working just as fast as they possibly can, then guess what? They're going to be a lot more patient than if they see people just kind of sitting around playing on their phones. That's why I have to wait so long. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
So
for sure.
There's that wheels in motion piece as well.
Yeah. And that if she had those wheels in motion, so really, and also kind of going back to the interview with Dennis Mosley Williams, where he talked about experience, he also talked about time. Yeah. And it's not necessarily about saving time. It's about making time worthwhile. And the way that fits in here is that she actually did not take up a lot of your time at all. She closed out the assistance very quickly. It was very efficient. But like I said, if it would have taken another 30 minutes, and maybe that 30 minutes could have been well spent if you were browsing the store, or at least chit-chatting it up while she tries to find the answer or waits for a call back or something like that, then now it's time well spent. And at the end of that time, ultimately it would have actually saved much more time in the future. So
well, let's go back to what your question about what can we put in day one orientation, or what can we put in training. I think, arming people with that question is important. Like, how can I help you resolve this? What can I do that would help you in this situation? But I also think it's about that concept of, we either solve the problem or how did you say it? Or we're on our way to solving the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So giving people the resource to be able to answer the question or solve the problem in whatever way that will be meaningful. So I remember, back when I was at Universal, and we really looked at the number of questions that we got from our guests. And then we looked at our park map and we said, you know what? 95% of the questions that people are going to ask are in the park map, right? So then we built all these training programs about how to use the map. Not necessarily what the answers are, but, because they're all color coded and, all these different numbers and A, B and 2, 3. And so we said, okay, if you can pull out this guide, now granted, all those are on phones now. If you can pull out this guide, this resource, you're going to be able to answer 95% of the questions that your guests are going to have. So then it became about us teaching how to use the resource, not necessarily what the answer was.
Okay. Yes. So I wrote down the intent and desire to solve problems is just as important as having the solution. Now, aligning that with what you just said, is it about intent and desire, or is it about having resources, or a combination of the two? So I would say having the resources combined with the desire to solve a problem is just as important as having the solution itself.
I would agree. Okay. Yeah. Because if you've got the intent and the desire, but no resource, then it's probably going to take a lot longer.
You're wasting a lot of time making phone calls to people that can't answer your questions.
If you have no desire, but you have the map in your back pocket, or you have the app on your phone,
that's the circumstance that you had.
It's not going to get pulled out.
Yeah.
So I think they both have to be there. And I would, being in the organizations that I've been in and the ones I've worked with, I think 9 times out of 10, the intent and desire is there. People genuinely want to help other human beings. So it's only when they start to think that I can't help them, or I don't have the resources, or I don't have the backup, or I'm going to do something, I'm going to get in trouble for it. Those kind of things are what will hold people back from making some of those decisions, or lessen that desire, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got 6 takeaways. So why don't we lay them out, and then that'll be a great wrap up to this.
Love it.
So either you have the solution, or you have the way to get to the solution. That's one takeaway, and it feeds in with the last one, which is what we literally just talked about. Your employees must be the expert to resolve all kinds of situations that will serve the guest the best. If the guest walks away still needing to figure out how to solve their problem, that's a service failure.
Can we add to that one?
Yeah.
Can we say that's your problem? Like that's tweetable to me.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Consider it tweeted.
Okay.
That's your problem. Okay. But is it your problem?
I think
Because
it is.
you don't think it's your problem. It's your problem because now you have someone who's angry at you, but you're no longer dealing with the problem. So it's a problem that it might not be your problem anymore. So then,
but it could be your problem with somebody else.
Right.
The next person.
Right.
That's my argument. I could see it go either way, but that'd be my argument.
We could debate that for a while.
Okay. Next episode.
If you go above and beyond, you must do it consistently because you're setting a new standard.
Yeah.
A service failure will have a larger magnitude when the standard is set higher. And then lastly, which I'm glad that we're just going to tweet out how it came across polished because there's a lot of scribble all over it and like carrots leading to new words. The combination of resources along with the desire to solve problems is just as important as having the solution.
Yes. I like it. All
cool.
That from my glasses falling apart.
Woo!
Woohoo!
So wait, so is this resolved?
It is now.
Okay.
So at the time of this recording,
because of LensCrafters. Yeah.
I went to LensCrafters. I've got the nose pads on there. They feel really solid. I keep checking them every single day. And like I said, when she put them back on my face that second time, they were perfect. So
that's awesome.
I'm not touching them except to take them off and put them on and clean them. So yeah, yes, right now it is resolved.
One last question. You ever thought about getting LASIK?
My wife has had like 4 eye surgeries. So that may have, pushed me away a little bit, but I have not thought about it for myself. No.
Okay. I had it about 9 years ago. I don't know if you knew that or not, or if you knew that I used to wear glasses. Maybe you did.
I did. Yeah. I didn't know if it was contacts or, okay.
Nope. Yep.
Okay.
So maybe that's the takeaway. No.
So I did say to myself, and I may have said it to some friends, I said, if we have to wear masks much longer, I would consider contacts.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, I wear sunglasses when it's sunny outside. So I hear you because they fog up just as easily. So
yeah.
Hopefully we won't be wearing masks for much longer. I don't know. And we're recording this well in advance of when this will air. I'm sure we probably will still be wearing masks when this episode does air, but hopefully we are continuing on our way to emerging from this pandemic and getting back to whatever normal will look like in the future so that we can continue serving our guests and serving our employees the best way and having a fantastic rebound of a year in 2021. Because I think really when it comes down to it, we are all Attraction Pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit AttractionPros.com.